First of all, big round of applause again for everyone that pitched to us. It can take a lot to get up on the stage and share ideas that are new and unproven. Like that's what's so fun, but also sometimes difficult about building innovative products and services. Also, big round of applause for our investors. Thank you for the commitment, your experience. And then last but not least, please get up quickly and let's give a big round of applause for our audience. You guys have been amazing so far. I know it's a long day. It's amazing to finally be in one and the same room. These last few years have been special in any sense of the word. Yeah, feel free to sit down again. I just wanted to get see if everyone's still alive, because some of you look so concentrated. And I think it's great that we've made it through almost the entire first day of our conference without actually talking too much about the internet computer itself. It shows that there's lots of activity, lots of stuff being built on the IC, and that's what really excites me. But at the same time, I also want to step into the shoes of someone that's pitching up here and give my version of how I perceive the IC and how I try to explain it. Because while I agree, and I've had lots of conversations today already about this, that the best way to pitch the IC is to just build on it and build something really cool that lots of people want to use and drive adoption up. At the same time, I'm really focused on making life easier for builders. Why? Because I think for every one builder that we can onboard that builds the future of Uber, the future of the music industry, the future of DeFi on the IC, for every one of those builders, we can onboard thousands of new users. And that's why I'm so passionate and have always been passionate ever since I helped start the foundation back in 2016 and focused on developer adoption leading up to our first planned launch date in 2018. Ever since then, I've been thinking about what should we use the IC for and why is it so unique? And over the years, I've had a few opportunities to rethink that and kind of take a step back and also look at the landscape, think about whether I rather want to spend my time building applications. But every single time I've come back to the IC because I think it is so unique, it's so different, and it deserves to be seen through. There's so much cool tech that the foundation, this great team has built over the years. I just want to see it through. I want there to be thousands of applications that are being built on it. And so over the years, I got to wear a few different hats. I mentioned it, I helped start the foundation in 2016. Before that, I was already an entrepreneur for about 15 years in Web 2. I discovered blockchain kind of by coincidence in 2011 when one of my teammates at a fintech startup that we were building, he asked to borrow my laptop over lunch to mine some Bitcoin. And he still owes me some Bitcoin. But that's when I first went down the rabbit hole and kind of never left that rabbit hole since. I got so excited about decentralization and what it makes possible for us. And I'll tell you why in a second. But before that, I then met Dom in 2016, and Tom and Timo and the original team at the foundation helped build out the foundation. I became a node provider. I started a fund, Tomahawk, in 2019 and started investing into ecosystem projects. And then also last summer, Artia, who's also here, and I decided to start Code and State. Why? Because we saw that there's gaps in this ecosystem, community building, the focus on developers, on builders, making it super easy to get started, making education about Motoko and other components of the IC more accessible. And we were both so passionate about this that we decided to start Code and State. We made that decision just about a year ago, really got up and running towards Q3 last year. Seb joined me, Isaac joined me at the beginning of this year. Now we also have Ben, who runs TalentDB with us. And we're hiring, we're finding more people. We want more of you to join us if you're passionate about making it easier for builders to build on the IC. So that's what I'm doing. And as I said, lots of hats that all kind of have IC on it. And the reason why I'm so passionate about the IC always starts with this question: does decentralization matter? And it's an emotional question. If you hang out at a bar tonight, or if you go to any Web3 event or meetup, and you ask people that question, you get all kinds of answers. You get the kind of maxis that say, yeah, everything should be decentralized just by principle. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people that are kind of delusioned, and they say, yeah, I thought so at some point, but it's not really realistic, so I've kind of given up on that. And then you have a wide range in between. The way I answer the question for myself, and always have answered it, is decentralization matters not because of decentralization, but because of the properties that it gives us. So if we see decentralization as a tool or a tool set that we can apply to different problems, challenges, opportunities in our lives, we get really positive properties that we can apply to those challenges. Transparency, mutability, you see most of them listed here. And while we didn't disrupt everything, when we look at the internet gave us properties as well, that information became available anywhere for very little money, very cheaply. And not everything took off on the internet in the early days, but some things did. They were proof of concepts. And the same holds true in Web3. I think all of us in here would agree that people have taken these properties and they've applied them to finance, and they've proven that we can build a new type of finance, a decentralized finance, that is not only different, but it's also better in many dimensions. And that's great. And I think finance is a very important part of all our lives, whether we want it or not. But there's so much more out there. I talked a bit about education earlier. There's governance systems. There's systems to make it more fair and transparent for people to make decisions together and enforce them. There's healthcare, real estate, probably 50 or 60 more industries than what I've listed here. So the question is, why haven't we disrupted all those industries yet? Like, why have we only applied it to finance so far? And I'm just old enough to have gone online via these things here. They made this very ugly sound when you went online, and it took forever to download a game or a short video clip. But it worked. This is how we went online in 1992, 1993, probably all the way till the end of the 90s. Do you remember what the internet looked like back then? For the most part, it was text-based services. And some of it, we had like early versions of a browser for Yahoo. You could go and load that in a browser. But the first few emails that I sent were from the command lines. I had to go talk to a telnet server, log in, then give it my subject line. And it was complicated. I would argue it was a lot more complicated than using Web3 today, where we have hardware wallets and we have a UX that's not really intuitive. But that's the stage that we're at. And the reason why we've only disrupted finance is because that's really the proof of concept. That's what we can do, and it's so obvious that we have to disrupt that with the tools that we've been given. But I'm waiting for the broadband internet age of Web3. So once broadband internet became available, that's when the UI and the UX of the internet became so much more usable. 2004, 2005, Facebook became available. 5 years later, Instagram. All websites basically became interactive. Everything became so much more alive. And that's the age that I'm working towards for Web3, because I think that's when we'll see all these other industries being disrupted. Why hasn't it happened yet? Or what's the state in Web3 that we're in? The way I look at it is that most of these layer ones that we all use and that we have access to and that are great as a proof of concept, they're blockchain databases. Why do I say that? Because ultimately we use them to store and retrieve tiny bits of data. The images go live somewhere else. We heard from Bob this morning that there is ways, of course, to even put images on Bitcoin, but that's clearly not what it's made for. And with these blockchain databases, what we can do is build decentralized ledgers. So that lends itself to finance. But what I really want to do is see the vision of this blockchain computer come alive, because that's where we can build these decentralized web apps. Why is it a problem? And coming back to my question, does decentralization matter? Well, because if something is almost completely decentralized, it's still centralized, right? There's still a point of attack where it could be stopped. There's a point that's not transparent. There's a place where there might be a middleman that makes it inefficient. If we look at the Web3 stack of a typical application today, take Uniswap or whatever application you're using day in, day out, this is the reality. This is what the stack looks like for the most part. You have a tiny bit of data, a database that is decentralized in the best sense of the word, but most of the stack lives on the traditional Web2 environment and infrastructure. And for me as a user, that's a problem, right? Because yes, I can go and I can sit down and I can read the documentation and I can, the same way I sent an email in 1993, I can probably figure out how to communicate with the database directly and formulate my requests in the command line, send those off, and interpret what comes back. But realistically, I don't want to do that, and most people cannot do that because they don't have the tools, or they don't have the knowledge, or they don't have the time. And so what I resort to as a user is I use Chrome or any other browser, I send a request off, and as soon as my request is sent off, I don't really understand what's happening now. Because the counterparty, this front end that I'm interacting with, that's not on decentralized infrastructure. It's not transparent. So I don't know what's happening on the back end now. And worst case, what I get back could be completely manipulated since I don't directly talk to the database. So what's happening that with the internet computer that could change that? Well, for me, I think about Web3 in 3 generations. Generation 1 is Bitcoin. Bitcoin gave us coins, meaning a digital scarce asset, totally fascinating that we can have that in an environment without a centralized party. But that's it, it gave us coins. Then the Generation 2, Ethereum, Solana, Near, all these other great layer 1s, that are all a bit more performant or a bit cheaper, a bit easier to use. What they gave us is contracts, meaning I can now have those coins or tokens and I can send them back and forth, and I can also automate parts of what I want to do with them. But that's it. It's still a database, and the equivalent to that in MySQL would be procedures. And the reason why I've been so excited and focused on the IC ecosystem ever since I heard Dom talk about this in 2016 is that the internet computer is the only Gen 3 blockchain. Why? Because it doesn't give us coins or contracts, it gives us canisters. And canisters, the way I look at it, are just decentralized servers. And with these decentralized servers, we can not only run a database, but we can run all the other parts of the stack as well. We can go and we can do the hosting on the internet computer, we can do the compute, we can do the media storage, there's solutions for authentication. We don't need a connector. And of course, and that's the best part about it, we also don't have to completely rebuild what's already been done in Web3. We can interface with those databases that exist. We talked about CK-BTC earlier today. At least outside, I talked to multiple people about CK-ETH. And once we generalize the ability to generate these keys and use them to interface with other blockchains, we can basically interface with all of Web3. The IC is very complementary. It's not replacing anything that's already there. I think if there's a lot of value and liquidity in Ethereum, there's no point in trying to move that to another platform. The consequence of this is that, not only is it a lot more secure if I can run all these components in one and the same infrastructure. That's, by the way, the reason why AWS has such a large market share, right? Because you have all these services in one given platform that's all secured and easy to communicate in a safe and secure manner between the different components. But I can then, since now all components are decentralized, all components earn these positive qualities. They're all transparent, immutable. I can transparently verify that what I'm sending to the system actually happens. And I think for me, that's the big power of the IC. Now, since we have these decentralized servers, we can of course do things with them that servers can do. And number one thing that I think is extremely powerful is we can directly serve web browsers. All of you know this. I always bring up Discover or other social apps that we have on the IC as an example. It's great. I bring up the website, it loads directly from the IC. There's no middleman, there's no place where that data could have been manipulated. And it's almost too good, like, because I always find myself trying to find ways to explain that this comes directly from the blockchain and demonstrate that, especially since we added the custom domains. So that's one key feature that I think is extremely powerful about using decentralized servers. Another one is that we rely a lot less on oracles, meaning systems like Chainlink that are expensive, they're kind of clunky, they're not very elegant, and unfortunately they tend to break down or at least degrade, especially during those times when they're most needed, when the price moves quite quickly. I love the ability that my servers, decentralized servers, they can not only communicate to other IC servers, but they can talk to any Web 2 or Web 3 server through a well-established protocol, which is HTTP. Then, of course, the scaling, I think we talked about it a couple times today. The fact that there's no one canister that's different from any other, and we can scale in a very frictionless manner. Reverse gas, for me, is one of the design decisions that I've always really admired Dom for, that he kind of foresaw all these years back that he's going to be able to drive costs down and build a system that will work so well with such a low cost that it becomes feasible for the developer to prepay for the compute, kind of the similar or the same model that we have in Web 2, which then enables not only much better conversion, but also lots of different business models instead of just charging users for every single operation. Bridges, we've talked about quite a bit already today. Absolutely fascinating. And then last but not least, one thing that I realize we as an IC community get very used to is the on-chain governance piece. That's not something that's a given in most other ecosystems. The fact that any of us can put up a proposal, and we've played a bit with this with, I don't know, who voted yes for the ICP community conference proposal? Did any of you see that? So I'm not encouraging anyone to misuse the NNS in that manner, but I think it's such a great and powerful system that every single chain that the system goes through runs through this governance process, and all of us who have ICP and decide to stake some of it can participate in that via voting. Okay, so I've done a lot of talking, and normally here I would jump into a quick demo. Seb was so kind to record this video for me, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip it today. So two reasons. One is interest of time, because I know we all want to get a bit of sun in before the sun sets, and it's been a long and intense day. But the second reason is also that usually I want to try and shine light on how easy it is. But since David showcased Juno this morning and made it look even easier, this is going to look complicated. So I'm just going to jump over it. Okay, what is built on the IC? I mean, sometimes I just have to remind myself and even look at that slide by myself because I'm just so amazed, like the breadth of applications that are being built. I know we don't have a ton of like news coverage on our ecosystem sometimes. So it's not that we're surfing TechCrunch and we see, oh wow, there's an Uber alternative built on the IC, or wow, there's this social network being built on the IC. We're working on this. We'll get there. We'll make them all regret that they didn't cover us earlier. But I always really like looking at this slide because I think it's so cool to see how diverse the ecosystem is that's already there, and I can only wait to see what the next 1,000 applications are going to look like. So quick round of applause for all of you for building. Now, one question that comes up every single time when I pitch the IC is, yeah, that's all fine, but it's not decentralized. And I don't know where it comes from. Or, I mean, of course, I've done lots of research, I've had lots of conversations about this, but I don't believe it's true, the criticism. I think it stems from a lot of misinformation and maybe from system design that's old or a state of the IC that is a long time ago. The way I look at it, so the first question I always ask back is like, what does decentralization mean to you? And then I discovered that for different people, decentralization means very different things, and they associate different rights or different functions with it. The most common one is, I cannot run a node on the IC, hence it is not decentralized. And while it was true that when the IC was going through Genesis, there was a relatively small set of node providers. In the last few months, there's been multiple providers that have submitted an NNS proposal and got onboarded in a very decentralized manner. The other way people look at decentralization is who makes the decisions, who can actually decide which version is going to be adopted, what changes are going to be implemented, and in the worst case, could potentially reverse something that was done on the chain. And I call that the political decentralization. For both of these stats are from this morning. I finished my slides this morning. Don't tell Isaac, because I know he's been running after everyone to submit slides at least 10 days before the conference. For me, this looks great. So we have 82 different node providers. I know a few, but I know far from 20% of them. Let's not speak about half of them. There's over 550 machines that are currently up and running, and there's almost 1,000 nodes in total that are still providing ways for the network to grow and become more active. And often the criticism that I hear is that, yes, okay, even now that I can submit a proposal and I can theoretically become a node provider, it's not feasible for me. I'm never going to be able to run a node because it costs so much to buy it, and then I have to put it in a professional data center to run it, which is associated with lots of cost, and I just can't get there. To which I say that's fair. I understand why the decision was made to design the IC in such a way, because that's where we get all this performance from. That's why we can run things like Discover or all the, I think Tom mentioned that he's a big fan of the video and media platforms that are being built on the IC. And that's the trade-off, right? Like it comes with professional infrastructure to some degree. What I would love to see is that at some point we can build nodes in a very simple manner that we can connect to the network and verify the transactions that are happening. Maybe we're not earning any rewards because we're not keeping up with the professional requirements for those full nodes, but so that anyone, even with like a Raspberry Pi, can verify that whatever is being recorded on the network is recorded in a fair, transparent, and immutable manner. And then the second piece that I often mention to anyone that brings this up is that the boundary node program is being rolled out, and those are going to offer incentives as well. Those are going to be much, much cheaper, and we also want them to be a lot more decentralized. And those are great ways to get involved in the node provider program. And then for the second part of the conversation, I know even within the community, I often have conversations about who controls the votes and who decides what's going through on the NNS and what doesn't go through. And so I messaged Kyle Langham, who now works at the foundation and has done a lot of really good data analysis on the IC. And apart from that, is also a very likable podcast host together with Jesse. And what he sent me is this research. This is from February 2023, so just 2-3 months old. And what he found is that it would take at least 134 different people. I haven't had time to dive into like the definition of person here, but it is a lot more decentralized by now than it used to be at Genesis. And so that was great news for me, because I think now I finally have a really good answer and a defensible answer for people that have questions about this. All right, so lots of really positive things to say about the IC. That's why I'm excited. But of course, I also realized that any piece of new technology is kind of hard to build on. And that's the motivation behind Code and State. We realize that there are challenges that are just natural in anything that's coming, that's new and kind of rethought, that offers new paradigms. It was the same way with Ethereum back in 2013, 14, 15, when not a lot of people understood how to build on there and what the specifications and the documentation looks like. So those are just a few of the challenges that we've identified by talking to many of you and asking you what would make it easier for you to build, or why is it hard and difficult to build on the IC right now. And so that's why we decided to start Code and State, and I just quickly want to tell you a few words about what Code and State is and how we interpret this term venture studio, what it is, how it works, and how it might be able to help you as well. First of all, this is our goal. We want to make it so easy to build on the IC that you can get started on a Saturday morning, know almost nothing about the IC, you sit down, you read about it, you watch a video, you follow a tutorial, whichever way you choose. You build an application, something extremely simple, you deploy it within that weekend, and before Sunday night, not only is your application live and has users, but you've also earned your first dollar. And that component is extremely powerful because once we can give creators and builders ways to earn money on the IC, that's when it's going to be unstoppable. That's when we're going to have like hundreds of new builders come in. How are we going to get there? How do we think about moving closer to that situation? It's through incubation and acceleration. RT and I, we want to build a place that great entrepreneurs and great builders can come to. They can join us, they get support from us for the next 1 to 2 years. And you will get support in the form of money for your team, for your salary. We will pay for your runway, for the tools that you need. But not only that, we will help you with all those challenges that come with building that aren't directly related to your product. We want you to be fully focused on building the best application, the best tool for builders on the IC, while we help abstract away some of the challenges that come with building in Web3. We had a few conversations or talks from lawyers this morning, and I was very positively surprised about the questions that were asked because it is a big topic. Structuring your company the right way from a legal and tax and regulatory perspective is something that's not easy. And then apart from that, we help you, of course, with our network of advisors. The two of us have invested in quite a few Web3 and Web2 companies. We'll help you with strategy, hiring, recruiting, and all of that. And then the best part, we're not looking to lock you in. You don't have to come to us and then stay with Code and State. We want to find the best entrepreneurs, and that's why we want to provide you with a real alternative to seed funding. So instead of going out and raising $500,000 or $1 million by yourself and financing your runway for the next 1 to 2 years, we give you that runway, and we let you keep most of the company. We want you to be successful on your own and leave Code and State after that period. Go out and raise the next funding round by yourself. What are we doing so far? We've been up and running for just over 6 months. We have a number of initiatives. There's Motoko Bootcamp, which Seb talked about a bit earlier. There's TalentDB, which Ben runs, and I'll have a slide about that in a second. Solid State. Solid State is a firm that helps you be sure that your code works before you go live. So once you have your version 1.0 built, or you're planning your SNS launch, you can come to Solid State, and Solid State will have some very bright minds look over your code, test it, model a few scenarios, pen test it, and make sure that we find bugs and problems in your code before you go live and potentially create challenges for your tokens and other launches. Then we're working on a stablecoin because obviously if we want you to get paid within the weekend and earn your first dollar, you need to be able to earn $1 on the IC. And then last but not least, we're here, we have this community conference. It's our youngest venture. We only decided to fully lean into it in January, and I'm just super happy with the work that Isaac and Patricia and Esteban and Ricardo and everyone else has done. So a quick round of applause for them. Motoko Bootcamp, I'm not going to say too much. Seb ran the last edition just last week. He basically finished Sunday, and Monday he jumped on a flight to come here. A great way not only to learn Motoko, but also to connect with other builders and people that are interested in creating disruption in the ecosystem. And then TalentDB, Ben, if you haven't met him yet, there's a booth right outside the door. He's the person to go to if you're looking to hire more talent in the ecosystem. And that's it. If you're excited about what I'm excited about, which is to make this possible, to make it easy, to make it feasible for hundreds and thousands of apps to be built on the IC, come talk to me or anyone from our team. And thanks so much.